Hello Raptors fans and welcome back to Raptors Report. Today we're going to be discussing the Toronto Raptors game against the Milwaukee Bucks in their very first Cup game. But before we get to that, I want to talk about the starting lineup and that faraway place, that mythical reality when almost every good Raptor is not on the injury reserve list. I know it's very hard to conceptualize and think about because it has happened so infrequently for the Raptors over the past two seasons. But we have to discuss it, I think, because there have been a couple of changes where guys' stocks have risen dramatically and other players have sunk a little bit. So I think that we should start with the guys that I have as locks for the starting lineup. The first player who is a lock when healthy is Scottie Barnes. Scottie Barnes is not only, in my opinion, the best player on the team, he is also one of the team's only large forwards. So it's kind of non-negotiable. If you want to have a team that has size, a team that can play with the bigger teams in the league, you're going to want to have Scottie Barnes on the floor in the starting lineup. He's 6'10", he's very muscular and strong and athletic, and he matches up well against most of the other large forwards. He matches up well against them. The next one, and I know that maybe he isn't the starting center for this team in 5 years. Who knows if he's going to be with the team down the road. But if you want to start your best five, and I think you kind of got to, Jakob Poeltl is the guy who should start for the Toronto Raptors, and in my opinion is a lock to do that. Playing without a center sucks. If you watch the Raptors before they got Jakob Poeltl, when they were playing Precious Achiuwa at center and they were playing all these different small ball lineups, it's not good. It is ugly basketball. Other teams waltz into the paint and lay it up. You can't get rebounds. You can't clear the paint. You need guys who can finish around the rim, guys who can dive to the basket, get offensive rebounds, guys who can stop other large centers from bullying you. Without that kind of player, it's going to be a mess. It's not a good product to watch, and I don't really want to entertain a non-center lineup. If the Raptors find another guy who's younger or has potential in that area, sign me up. Let's do it. I'm not married to the idea of Poeltl, although he has been very good for the Raptors, so he's the other guy. Then you get into the interesting question. There are four guys who are competing for the final three spots in the starting lineup. And it's pretty obvious at this point who I'm talking about. RJ Barrett, Immanuel Quickley, Grady Dick, and Davion Mitchell. No, I'm just kidding. Ochai Agbaji. Those guys are all competing for the final three spots, the guard, swing, small forward spot. And there is a case to be made for all of them going to the bench. I would have had RJ Barrett as a lock if you asked me maybe a week ago. And I don't want to sound fickle, but he has had a really disastrous week or so, and he has not looked very good. And guess who has looked very good? A guy who I said should probably start off of the bench, Grady Dick. Grady Dick is obviously a rising player in the league, and I knew that a couple weeks ago. I didn't realize that the rise would be so quick and he would look so comfortable playing those big minutes and doing those big things for the Toronto Raptors. So I think that you have to consider each one of them going to the bench. So let's go through each one of them and talk about the case for each one of those players going to the bench. So we'll start with Immanuel Quickley because he's the smallest, and the case for him going to the bench was kind of what I was talking about a couple of episodes ago, where people were talking about him as a sixth man, and I was saying, no, he could be a very good starting caliber point guard for the Toronto Raptors. But I think that you have to at least consider it. The issue with that, there are two issues. Number one, he is one of the older players on the team. In fact, of the Scottie Barnes, RJ Barrett, Grady Dick, Ochai Agbaji quadrant, he is the oldest. He's the oldest player, he has the most seniority. He's also being paid a lot of money. The Toronto Raptors committed a ton of money to Immanuel Quickley this past offseason, and obviously see him as a starting caliber player for the Raptors. And so with that in mind, it might be difficult and a hard pill for him to swallow. Obviously, if he plays a lot of minutes then he shouldn't have a huge issue with it. But let's be honest, this is the NBA. Guys have egos. Coming off of the bench, that's not something that players really want to do if they can start. I think the only guy I've ever heard of where he was like a true star caliber player who was comfortable coming off of the bench was Manu Ginobili. And I think the reason that he was comfortable with it was because, you know, they were winning like tons of championships and they had Tim Duncan and Coach Popovich. But I don't think that that is the case for most NBA players. I don't think that they want to come off of the bench, and he would probably have an issue with that. But in terms of skill set, I think that it would work. I mean, he's done it before. He is a scoring guard. He could come in, hoist up a bunch of shots, get his numbers and look good. And if there's an injury, he can start again. So that would be the case for him. The biggest case for it would be that it would work. The case against would be that it's a salary mismatch for the bench, and perhaps he probably would not take too kindly to that. I don't think many people would, but there are younger players who are still on the rise. Maybe that would be something that they would have to do. They'd have to sacrifice and come off the bench for the older players, but that would be the case for Immanuel Quickley. Next, let's move to RJ Barrett. And yeah, as I was saying about a week and a bit ago, I would have probably had him as a lock for the starting lineup because he was playing so well and doing so much for the Toronto Raptors offense. But the shine has come off of the coin a little bit for RJ. He has really struggled over the past couple of games, and I'm not giving up on him. This is not me waving the white flag on RJ Barrett. I am not saying, hey, it's time to trade RJ Barrett. I'm not saying this is a hopeless cause. But what I am saying is that, listen, you got to take into account what's happening. And the sample size of him in Toronto was small. Coming at the end of the season, he looked very good. At the beginning of the season, he looked very good, and then he's hit a rough stretch. But that stretch is not insignificant when looking at the amount of time that he played well with the Raptors. So let's just say that I'm a little lower on him than I was a week ago. When it comes to coming off of the bench, I think that there would be similar issues to Immanuel Quickley. He's been in the league longer than Immanuel Quickley, even though he's a little younger. He's also the hometown kid and has had a big resurgence in play, and he probably sees himself as an up-and-coming star. I think that he would probably not enjoy coming off of the bench for two of the younger players in Grady Dick and Agbaji. That might not sit well with him. But I also think that it would work pretty well. He would be able to run the offense, organize the offense. I was speaking about how well he was doing in reading the court and finding guys. And while he hasn't been able to do that very well over the past couple of games, he would be able to do that in a backup role. He would be the point guard. When Scotty Barnes and Immanuel Quickley come off of the floor, he would have more of a chance to be the guy who runs the show for the second unit. Similar to Immanuel Quickley, but more of a facilitator role. And also, what he's struggled with over the past few games has been the focal point of the defense. Being a drive-first player, a guy who likes to get into the paint, and has an issue with really strong rim protectors, that's not going to be as much of a problem in the second unit, because most of the time NBA teams, they start their true centers, guys who protect the basket. And then off of the bench, usually they have an energy big. That's kind of the trend that I've noticed. Most teams, their approaches, and he would be able to attack that kind of a defense a lot better. So that's the case for him. Next up, Grady Dick. So Grady Dick, I was suggesting that he would be the one to come off of the bench at the end of the preseason and the start of the regular season. And my reasoning for that was that, first of all, he's the youngest of the group. So he still has a lot of seasoning and work to do to grow and become the player that he could be one day. But he has made significant strides for the Toronto Raptors. He is the team's leading scorer, scoring 20 points per game on good efficiency. He has a valuable skill set. His ability to run off of the ball, catch and shoot, that is something that would mesh very nicely with Scottie Barnes. Scottie Barnes would be ecstatic to be able to play with a player who demands the kind of off-ball attention that Grady Dick does. So he would have a knock-on effect for everybody else in the lineup. The spacing would be much better with him in the starting lineup. But the case for him coming off of the bench would be that if he's in the starting lineup, when everyone is healthy, his shot attempts are going to go down. And I feel like one of the things that I'd like to see from Grady Dick is being able to get up a ton of shots. I feel like it's going to accelerate his development. I feel like also one of the steps that he can make as a player is with the ball in his hands. The flashes that he's shown over the past few weeks have made me think this guy has some potential as a creator. So that would help perhaps to get him to the next level as a player, is putting the ball in his hands a little bit more in the second unit. And also the second unit could just be completely geared around getting him opportunities to shoot the ball. So there are a couple of compelling reasons to bring him off of the bench, although he might have just simply played his way out of that. He might have just played too well to be benched when everyone is healthy. The last person on the list, and probably the person that I would least like to see go to the bench, is Ochai Agbaji. And there are a couple of reasons for that. First of all, Ochai Agbaji, he is one of the best defenders on the team. He is the best perimeter defender on the team. He picks up the hardest assignments. He's strong, he's athletic, he plays the right way. He does all of the little complementary things that any team needs to win. He doesn't need the ball in his hands. He's a great floor spacer from the corner, and even above the breakdown, he's hitting those shots too. The guy has been phenomenal for the Raptors this season. There is a case for him to go to the bench, although I think it's the weakest case, and that is that they want to have all of the firepower, all of the guns in the starting lineup. And Ochai Agbaji, while he is an excellent complementary player, perhaps doesn't require the amount of defensive attention that the other three do: Immanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, and Grady Dick. I think that this is the most likely scenario. If everyone was healthy, I think they would bring Ochai Agbaji off the bench. I think it might actually be the worst guy to bring off of the bench. But I could certainly see it happening just so that they could see what they have with Quickley, RJ, Scottie, Grady, and Jakob Poeltl. They might feel like offensively there is just so much juice there that their offense would be extremely hard to stop. While I feel that's true, and I feel it's kind of likely that they would be more willing to bring Ochai Agbaji off of the bench, it makes the least sense to me, because Grady Dick, Immanuel Quickley, and RJ Barrett as a defensive trio would be pretty disastrous. Quickley is a small guard. He can do certain things well. He's not the greatest defender. He's not horrible, but any small guard, unless you are one of one, like an extremely disruptive defender, you are going to have a hard time being a positive force on the defensive side of the ball, which is fine when you take into account all of the other things Quickley brings to the table. RJ Barrett is a good on-ball defender, or at least an adequate on-ball defender. He is a very poor off-ball defender. And having him in the starting lineup would certainly bring the level of the defense down, especially if he continues to fall asleep on his man when he's off of the ball. And Grady Dick, while I feel like he's made strides, he's certainly not the defensive liability he was last season, and he's had some good plays. His problem is when he is guarding a high-level offensive player on the other team. He lacks the lateral foot speed to stay with that kind of player. He can get disrupted on screens. He gets hung up on screens pretty frequently. Those three together have significant defensive weaknesses. And while obviously having Scottie Barnes and Jakob Poeltl in the lineup would help mitigate those flaws, they're not going to erase them. To me, Ochai Agbaji, if you add him and he is picking up the other team's top offensive player on the perimeter, and then you can have Scottie Barnes roaming, Jakob Poeltl staying near the basket, doing all of that sort of stuff that you like to see those two players do, it would make a lot more sense from a defensive standpoint to have him on the floor. It's musical chairs. So those are the four guys that are going to be competing for the final three starting spots, and it will be very interesting to see who gets demoted. I know that's kind of a sick game. It's like the Hunger Games. It's like Squid Game. Who is the one? Who's gonna lose? It's sick entertainment for you sickos out there. And I'm interested to see what happens. Next up, we are going to be going into the player evaluations. And the guy we're going to start with is Grady Dick. Grady Dick had a phenomenal game last night. And while he did the thing that he's been doing the past few games, which is have like a stellar, unbelievable first half where he just goes bonkers, hitting shots and making plays and layups and doing his whole, showing his whole package. Dick showing his whole package. It is still a treat to watch. It is so fun to watch this guy play. It's beautiful basketball to watch when you get to see a prime shooter do their thing and get themselves open and make shots. It's such a satisfying experience to watch a guy cook off the ball. And Grady Dick is doing that. He is using screens. He is showing some creation. There was a very nice move where he got Rollins. He came off of a screen, received the ball, did a really nice crossover to get Rollins going one way. Then he took it to the baseline, where else, and pulled up for a swish. It was just gorgeous looking basketball. I've also noticed his patented move where he drives downhill and then does a running layup kiss off glass that drops in. That's starting to be another signature Grady Dick move. And then from 3-point range, he was 4 of 10 from 3, so that's great. You can see that the confidence level with this guy has grown to monumental proportions. He is feeling like the bucket is 3 feet wide. And the other thing that he did that game, which was extremely impressive, was drawing fouls. And foul drawing, if you want to be a scorer in the NBA, that is one of the main ways to do it. And the way you do that is by getting into the paint, letting your body get hit by other players, being fearless, not shying away from contact. And he drew a number of fouls on some of the best rim protectors in the league. Giannis, Brook Lopez, those guys are no joke in the paint. Just ask RJ Barrett. But he drew a number of fouls on those guys just by being fearless and taking it to them. And so, amazing night for him. 32 points, another career high, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, and 3 turnovers, and 14 of 16 from the line. The man had it going. So he is doing a ton of stuff that I think will pay dividends down the road. It's not leading to wins right now, but I'm really liking what I'm seeing from Grady Dick, and it's hard to put into words how impressed I've been with his growth this season. Next up, we will go from the high to the low. And the reason that I'm going to RJ Barrett next is because of kind of the severity of the performance last night. I think he had, I mentioned it online, one of the worst games I've seen from a Raptor. Just full stop. One of the worst games I've seen. And again, let me just start this off because there will be a bunch of different things that I say here that will be negative. So I want you to know that I haven't given up on RJ, but I have to give an accurate description of the performance that I saw last night, which can only be summarized as disastrous. So game losing. RJ Barrett, the lead ball handler, the lead guard, he's the one who is going to be guarded the most heavily in the starting lineup. And they put Giannis on RJ. They put Giannis on RJ, and whenever he was on the floor, they had Brook Lopez on the floor as well. So RJ, what does he like to do? His main way of scoring is slashing and attacking the basket. So if you have 2 of the most intimidating rim protectors in the whole league standing in the paint, it is going to be very difficult for you to score inside. And we saw that last night. So RJ Barrett had 7 points on 14 shots. He was 1 for 5 from 3, which is one of the ways that you would hope you would be able to beat those 2, is because if they're playing for you for the drive, if they're going to be standing and lurking in the paint all night, you have to kind of stretch the floor out and make some shots, and he wasn't able to do that. 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and 5 turnovers. And not very good defense. He was also a negative 23 on the game, and I don't like using single game plus minus because it is very noisy. You are carrying everybody else's pluses and minuses. If you're on the floor with other players who aren't doing their job, you're going to get dragged down, even if you are doing a good job. But in this case, it was pretty accurate in what I saw. He did not do a good job last night. He was trying to make it happen too much, and he was careless. He knows that he is the number one guy on the floor with the ball, and I understand it is not easy when you are being guarded by Giannis and Brook Lopez is in the paint. That's going to hurt you. What you can't be, you have to be more precise, and you can't make mental lapses. Those are the things that I will criticize him for. RJ was very careless with the ball last night. His handle wasn't tight enough. He got picked by Rollins a number of times. He was also throwing careless passes that got picked off. 5 turnovers to 2 assists is very poor, and he was very ineffective from a scoring standpoint. And those are the 2 things that you expect from RJ. Those are the 2 things that you want to get from him, are scoring and playmaking. So when he is a net negative and pretty far into the negatives on both of those categories, he's not bringing anything to the table. And so, you know, that was one of the worst games, definitely the worst game as a Raptor, for sure. And I really hope that he can kind of bust out of this snide, because I think his confidence is starting to go downhill. Hopefully home cooking tonight will be able to help him, but I need to see more from him. Full stop. Next up, we'll go back to the other positive guy on the team. I think the player who played the second best was Jakob Poeltl. Jakob Poeltl had a pretty poor first half. He didn't look very effective in the paint, but in the second half, he looked great. He was really good. He outplayed Brook Lopez pretty considerably. He had a couple of blocks in this game. He blocked Giannis. He blocked Brook. He had 3 steals. He was active in the paint. He was doing what he needed to do. The Bucks took a ton of threes that game. I'm not going to say that that's all Jakob Poeltl. I think that there's certain things that the Raptors give up in their defensive schemes that allow that to happen. But one of the things is that if a center like Jakob Poeltl is on the floor and they're providing help and they're cutting guys off, teams are going to settle for threes more. That's a good thing. The Bucks only shot 28% from 3, so it was a good defensive effort, and centers are the quarterbacks for the defense. They are the guys who are pointing everything out, calling things when they're on the floor, making sure everybody's in the right spot, providing help. It was a good defensive effort, and Jakob Poeltl was the main reason for that. 13 points, 8 rebounds, 1 assist, 3 steals, 2 blocks, 3 turnovers. Not a great percentage, 6 for 13 from the field, so that wasn't great. But when it comes to defense and you're playing Giannis, you're playing Brook Lopez, they're going to try and bully you in the paint. I know Giannis shot a good percentage this game, but he didn't dominate the Raptors on the inside, and you have to give Poeltl credit for that. Next up, we'll talk Ochai Agbaji. And Ochai Agbaji didn't have a great scoring night, didn't have a great shooting night. He had 8 points on 3 for 8 shooting. He was 2 for 4 from 3, so that continues to be huge for the Raptors. But it wasn't a stellar night for him on the offensive side of the ball. I would say it was kind of mediocre, but his defense was good. And again, Giannis is Giannis, and he did shoot a good percentage, but it's not all about how efficiently he shoots. It's about making him have to work to get into the paint. He wants to get into the paint every single time. He's not going to shoot a ton of jump shots. He is going to have a shot attempt when he gets into the paint, and he's going to be very efficient from that. So you have to look at the amount of shots that he took. Giannis only took 12 shots, so you have to give credit to Ochai Agbaji and Jakob Poeltl for helping to contain him, make sure that he isn't getting a ton of shots. If he gets 20 field goal attempts, you're going to lose the game. He is going to score way too efficiently. So limiting him is one of the things. Picking him up in transition, staying with him. I think Ochai Agbaji did a really good job in that aspect. And he continues to just be, if not the best player on the Raptor, one of them. Game to game, you're going to get defense. You're going to get those corner 3-point shots on good percentages. You're going to get winning plays. He had 7 rebounds, 2 steals, and an assist. He did have 3 turnovers, kind of uncharacteristic for him, but then again, everybody was turning the ball over, so you can't just point to him. But yeah, I can't say a negative word about Ochai Agbaji this game. I thought he did a good job. Happy with his performance. Davion Mitchell does things well. He does things well. He plays good defense. When Giannis was running down the court. You have to build that wall. He was one of the components of that wall. He had a really nice strip in the second half. Really positive play that helped the Raptors close the distance a little bit. He does make good plays. He's not a great passer, I would say. Like, he's not making high-level reads, but he's a ball mover. The issue is that he had 1 point in this game on 2 shots. He did have 8 assists, 4 rebounds, a steal, and 3 turnovers, but again, everybody was turning it over. So it is really hard to evaluate him as a player because he does things that you want, but he also doesn't do things that you need. So I don't know exactly how to rate him in this game. I will just say he had an okay game. I'm not going to criticize him too harshly because he does the things that he does, but he didn't bring that little extra that you want to see, which is hitting catch and shoot shots, which is maybe getting out in transition and scoring, bringing some kind of scoring to the table. He didn't do that, but he does do other stuff. So I can't get too mad at him. He's doing better than I thought he would. Can't hate on it. Next up, we'll do the truncated bench. Chris Boucher had a good game. He is, again, providing scoring off of the bench. 12 points on 12 shots isn't great, but he was 2 of 5 from 3, 5 rebounds, and 1 turnover. In 20 minutes, I think he did a pretty good job off of the bench as the scorer. That's what they ask him to do. That's what he's bringing. He's been pretty consistent in providing energy and scoring, and he's doing what you want from a 6th man. The commentary on him is always pretty similar. If he's bringing the scoring, you're going to hear me say something nice about him. If he doesn't bring the scoring, if he doesn't bring the offensive rebounding, I'm going to say he had a poor game, but he did provide the scoring in this game, so good for him. But I'm kind of getting excited here because maybe I'm going to have to sign the apology form. Bruno Fernando had a gem last night. And apart from one possession where he held the ball way too long and rejected 4 dribble handoffs where I was ripping my hair out, what are you doing? The guy was awesome. He had a dunk of the year poster on Giannis. It was sick. The guy exploded, had Giannis cowering under the rim. Giannis made a business decision and he dunked all over him, made the bench go nuts. It was awesome. Great pass from Grady Dick as well. Pocket pass, bounce pass, got him in stride, able to yam it on Giannis. One of the dunks of the year, certainly the dunk of the year for the Raptors. 8 points, 13 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 blocks in only 18 minutes. Fantastic game from Bruno Fernando. And I mean, you're not going to get this every night. And when he's not filling up the stat sheet with points, rebounds, blocks, he is making mistakes. And he did make mistakes last night, but you can't hate on the guy if he's putting up those stats, and those blocks were pretty impressive as well. Good job, Bruno. But let's talk about the game in general. Yeah, not a very good game. I thought that the Raptors had a chance against the Bucks, and you could see that the Bucks have their flaws. Giannis is excellent. AJ Green, who is their 3-point specialist, he's a fun player to watch. He has not attempted 1 non-3-point shot, and he's good at making them. Brook Lopez really sucked from beyond the arc. He was only 2 for 10 from 3. He had 13 points on 14 shots. He couldn't really get anything going inside. But the big thing that he brings is paint intimidation, and it kind of shut down the Raptors' game plan. It shut down RJ Barrett. And also Giannis, those two owned the paint on the defensive end. I mean, Jakob Poeltl did an okay job scoring inside with his strange-looking layup package, his bizarre moves, but nobody else could really find purchase on the inside, and that was really it. And Grady Dick, because he is so phenomenal shooting the ball and being an outside threat, that's how you beat the Bucks. When you have Brook Lopez and Giannis Antetokounmpo in the paint, you've got to make your shots. And Grady Dick was pretty much the only guy who was capable of doing that last night. In all, it was a disappointing performance. I think the Bucks are a very beatable team, but I think that the Raptors, their spirits as a team, are probably at an all-time low right now. They're dealing with many injuries. Emmanuel Quickley was re-injured. I didn't mention that prior to this, but he has an elbow injury, the Tommy John surgery injury that baseball players need to get. So, they're throwing the kitchen sink at the Raptors with injuries, just all these bizarre things. Hopefully he can heal up and get better soon. The Toronto Raptors kind of in a bad way right now. They are looking for a win. That's been a long time since they have had a win. They are 2-10. The Bucks were right there with them. They were 2-8, but unfortunately the Raptors weren't able to close the deal and they fall to 0-1 on the Cup. But the Cup continues and they play the Pistons, another winnable game. Although the Pistons have looked pretty good this season, they will be missing Tim Hardaway Jr. There was a nasty injury that he suffered in the last game. He got elbowed in the face, hit his head on the ground. Hopefully he's okay. But yeah, Cade Cunningham is having his best season as a pro. Jaden Ivey is a bucket. Jalen Duren is a hard-nosed center who plays tough basketball. So they've got some guys. I don't think it's going to be an easy game, especially with the way that the Toronto Raptors have looked so far this season and with their injuries, but it is a winnable game. It is in Toronto. Maybe a little bit of home cooking can help these guys rejuvenate, get some confidence back. Hearing those Toronto fans cheer for them, they could go to 1-1 on the Cup. So who knows? And anyway, that is the video. I hope you took something away from it. What are your thoughts on Grady Dick? Is this guy going to continue setting career highs every week? Is he the truth? Will he come back to earth? What are your thoughts on RJ Barrett? Is this it? Is he regressed to the mean? Or is he just experiencing a temporary slump? Let me know here in the comments and also on Twitter or Blue Sky, where Toronto Raptors fans are seeming to flock to. You can reach me there at Raps Report. And as always, thanks for tuning in to Raptors Report, your source for in-depth Raptors content.